Two of the most powerful people in America get down and take out the boxing gloves. And there's been some non answers on one of the most high profile pedophilia cases in the nation, if not in the world. We're going to get to talking about that and a little bit more in this short episode of We the Patriots podcast. I'm your host, Sal Asante, and I hope that y'all enjoy. Let's get right to it.
About this thing that's in my brain, it keeps me from wanting to go on, but I want some gain. Baby,
Got a little beer spill on the shirt here. Hope you all had a great week. This Sunday, today as I'm recording this, is the day that we are celebrating my brother's graduation. So if you ever get to see this, Lorenzo, happy graduation. I hope you enjoyed your night. I hope you had a great day. May have had a beer or two in me, but I don't think that's going to affect the quality of this episode. That might make it a little bit better. As I mentioned and alluded to in the intro here, it's going to be a little bit of a short episode. I don't think that I'm going to riff too long. I got a couple of requests to go over the fallout in between Musk and Trump. I will do that today. However, I am going to be a little bit of a letdown. I'm not going to give a bunch of receipts. I'm not going to go over timeline by timeline and go over every single wink and nod. I think it's actually taking away from the broader point that needs to be taken. So I'll get into that a little bit. And another thing that I want to talk about today, which I think is of a little bit more implicating of the government itself, is the recent interview between Joe Rogan and Kash Patel, the director of the FBI. Without any further ado, let's get into the actual meat and bones of it. The Trump and Musk fallout. So I think what I'm going to do first is kind of lay out what I think that you all need to know. I'm not claiming to know everything about this, maybe missing some points, some very important points. That being said, I think that if you're very curious, you should go and look into the detailed logs on both Truth Social, where Trump is posting all of his stuff, and on X, where Musk is posting all of his stuff. At the end of the day, and just kind of get down to the bare bones of it. What it seems like to me, as I've kind of been following it, Musk has taken the opportunity over this past weekend, over the past about 3 or 4 days, in order to attack Trump and, more broadly speaking, attack the most recent spending bill that has reached the floor and now it's coming to the Senate. At the end of the day, I think it needs to be taken with a grain of salt. And the reason that I say this, I don't have the exact receipt of when this came from, but very recently, Elon himself has come out and said basically that he no longer believes that cuts are, and this is paraphrasing, this is not his exact words, but cuts are not the entirety of the scope that needs to happen here. And the bigger scope is that the United States government and the United States economy as a whole needs to grow in order to outproduce what we have. So I think keeping that in mind and keeping that message in mind and understanding that even the person that is behind what a lot of people like to call the Doge and Doge cuts and all this, even he doesn't seem to be an entire believer. But with all that being said, where all of this started was Elon coming after the bill, coming after the spending bill, raising the debt limit. And what I think was the turning point of the argument between Trump and Musk was when Trump said, well, one of the biggest ways that we can cut spending is to cut all the contracts given out to Musk and his companies. Now, if you're being realistic, the amount of money that's changing hands in there is minuscule in comparison to the amount of spending on the whole as the American government sees fit. But to be honest with you, I see where Trump is coming from. And it's not saying that I think that Trump has the right call here. What I am saying is that I think that Elon has a bit of an issue. This is an issue that, not to say that I didn't come up with myself, but I definitely didn't think this entirely through myself until I heard another person speak it out. And that was on Dave Smith's podcast. I believe the name is Part of the Problem. He has a co host on there, and the co host actually mentioned that there is a bit of a conflict of interest when somebody holds both a government job and a private job. And I think it's quite clear to all of us here, if you're paying attention enough, that Musk has multiple private jobs, CEO of multiple companies, has a lot to do with government contracts, receiving government contracts, receiving government money. But I do think that there is a very fine point to be made there where if you are an employee of the government and you also hold employment with private firms, you run into a conflict of interest. And what is that conflict of interest? Well, it should be pretty clear, but if you don't understand the conflict of interest, especially when you aren't on the level of an Elon Musk, of a Donald Trump, of Jeff Bezos, any of these people, if you're on that level, the conflict of interest comes in the fact that you could sway public opinion and especially voting, you could sway politicians in order to vote in laws that are pro your business. And if you are in the position to sway public legislation in order to benefit yourself, benefit your companies, there's a conflict of interest if you hold a position in both points of that equation. Again, both the government and the private equity firm. Now, I agree with this individual. I'm not going to remember his name. It's Rob something, the co-host of this Part of the Problem podcast. But I also think that another point to be brought up here is that when someone has as much power as an Elon Musk, and when you think about the net worth, even just looking at whether net worth, first of all, is really a great metric to go off of whether someone has the amount of money that you think they do. First of all, a lot of that money is buried in stocks, and if they were to sell those stocks or try to get access to the cash that they allegedly have access to, it would A, put the company in a lot of trouble, B, would not have the liquidity that you think they do. But I think another point of it as well is there is a lot of assumptions based on companies like Forbes or Fortune companies that are assuming the value of people's holdings, and they just don't have it right. So even with all that being said, what you're talking about again with when it comes to Musk and Trump is two of the very most powerful people in the country, one being the president of the United States, one being allegedly the richest person in the United States. And when you're looking at things from that perspective, and Trump as the president of the United States basically threatening to withhold, and I think at points did threaten to withhold government funding for Elon Musk's businesses and projects, there is a pretty large consideration that needs to be put on it as the American voter that, well, this is not where we see the power of the president how it should be wielded. Now, how it evolved, it's kind of got pretty dirty. I believe shortly after Trump threatened to withhold or said that there should be cuts made to Elon businesses, Elon actually quoted out or tweeted out that actually the big bombshell is that Trump's name was in the Epstein files and that's why they won't be released. Trump then went back with some other garbage, and Elon essentially is quoted as, and I don't think the tweet is still live to be fair, but I believe on X that Musk said something to the effect of, "Don't you fuck kids." And I'm sorry for the vulgarity, but that's exactly what the tweet read. Again, I don't really want to go down word for word, line by line, and tweet by tweet of what this interaction really was, because at the end of the day, it was a fallout between two mega egos, and it was kind of foreseeable. I think for most people that saw these people working together, there's a bit of an issue and a conflict when you have two people that believe that they are the center of attention and they're fighting for that center of attention because you have, again, two of them, two polar people. But another issue that I see here, and I just don't know how much this is going to get talked about. A lot of people, if you've been reading up on X or following the stuff on social media, what you might be seeing is that, there's some 4D chess being played here. And that 4D chess, just to explain a little bit, is the idea that maybe there is an attempt to revitalize Elon's image with the people on the left because he's fallen out so much. And given that he really helped Trump get elected, maybe he needs to gain that favor back with people on the left. You also see people saying that Trump needed a way in order to get the bill that allegedly he put forth or co sponsored in a way and get it shot down. That way they could renegotiate. I'll just be honest with you, I don't see that as being the case. There is a lot of issues with that, and it kind of assumes a farther level of intelligence, both on Elon Musk's part, which could be understandable, but also on Donald Trump's part. And if you listen to enough supporters of Donald Trump, which I've not been able to come in contact with a lot lately, given as though how much I have been combating the ideas of the president, especially around the spending bill. But if you listen to them enough and you get enough of their feed, what a lot of the excuses that get made on the behalf of the president is that, well, he's just operating on a higher level. You got to trust the process. You got to allow him to do his thing. And when it comes to this is just stupidity at the end of the day. Now, when you look at it on the kind of the grand scale, Trump actually comes out, I think, as being the bigger man when it comes to this devolution of a relationship. Trump really didn't go in and really hardcore attack, whereas Elon Musk kind of seems like he spun out. So I think that Trump, in a way, kind of comes out ahead. But at the end of the day, it's just not a good thing, especially when Trump was kind of running on this thing of Doge, running with Musk at the head, and now Musk is going to be nowhere to be seen, especially based on the last interactions and the public interactions of the fallout. I don't think that there's really a chance that this revitalizes or that there's a way that this recoups. So I think at the end of the day, both of them really do look kind of dumb, and it would be really surprising to see them work together in the future. Now, granted, Trump only has about 3 years and about 4 months left, 3 years and 6 months left of effective leadership in the presidential role. So it's feasible that Musk outlasts it and comes back in and works with the next government. That's no problem. Totally understandable. But I think a big thing that us as the American people need to realize is that this is the epitome of American politics. There is a lot to be said for the fact that Americans in general have been voting based on a emotional feel. And when you feel like your guy, when you feel like your person or your party is heading in the right direction and they lose or they win or whatever the result of whichever election actually occurs, at the end of the day, you're getting hoodwinked. And I think this is probably what happened between Trump and Musk is the best example that we've had in quite some time because it's so public that you're being lied to. You're being lied to by all sides. It doesn't matter whether you're a Republican thinking that, oh, we finally have the chance, we have the House, we have the Senate, we have the presidency, we even have the Supreme Court that's leading our side, or whether you're on the opposite side where, someone like Obama got in. We have all the levers of power in our direction. At the end of the day, you're not going to get everything you ask for. And even still, you're probably going to get some things that are opposite to the things that you voted for your candidate for. And I think this is a great example of what happened between Trump and Musk of you need to keep your realities when it comes to government and politics in check. You're never going to get everything you ask for. Actually, you'd probably be lucky to get something like a quarter, a third of what you asked for. And at the end of the day, in order to get what you asked for, you're going to have to give up a whole lot. You're going to have to compromise. Again, this is just kind of a great example, I think, of being taken advantage of as the American people, as the American voter. And if we're not able to wake up, so to speak, and be able to vote people that are going to hold the line, and by hold the line, I mean really hold true to their values before they get into office and not denigrate those values as they're in office, then we're going to deal with the same shit over and over and over again. It doesn't matter what side gets voted in. And I think that's the bigger point as compared to, again, going over chronologically all the different spats and all the different itemized list of all the things that these two people have publicly spat over. At the end of the day, what matters more is that the American people got played in order to get a form of government, get a person elected. If you're not recognizing that these people, no matter what party they are, whether it's Trump and the Republicans, whether it's Biden, Kamala, and Democrats, or whether it's somebody else, they are representing a block of people that they are trying to get elected. And if they are elected, what ends up happening is those people have a little bit more of a pull on the levers of power. However, I'll caveat that heavily with the fact that there is a significant amount of the United States government that is under tea leaves, that is not directly elected by the American people. And you can't control that, especially at this point. We can't control the bureaucracy. So if those things are going to continue to be in place and if spending is going to be directed at these people and not really be entirely in control of the President of the United States, the House of Representatives, the Senate, then it doesn't, at the end of the day, matter what can we elect. And I think it's so important to pay attention to the amount of decisions that are just not in the hands of who we elect. Now, with all that said, I think at the end of the day, what you got to take away from this Trump and Elon feud is that it's two egomaniacs that are fighting with words. For example, Elon throwing out the Epstein ties and trying to get under Trump's skin. When you look at it, it would be inconceivable and really malpractice if Elon was to have access to the documents that he's claiming to see Trump's name on when it's implicating him with Epstein. And so the personal attacks that Elon made and tried to push forward, at the end of the day, they really make him look really bad and kind of stupid. What you really need to pay attention to, and that's not me saying, I think I mentioned on this podcast before, but if I haven't, there's a very good chance that Trump is implicated in the Epstein stuff. But that being said, you can't just go off baseless information. And it's the same thing as the next topic that I want to talk about and the final topic of today. So, moving on from that, again, if you're upset that I didn't go over word for word and line for line with the Trump and Epstein stuff, there's a bunch of people that are going to be going over that stuff. You can go listen to that. I think the biggest thing that you got to take away from that feud is that it doesn't matter who you're voting in. It doesn't matter who you're supporting. You're going to get fed a line of bullshit in order to get you to pull that trigger, pull that lever for those people. If you're not recognizing that, and if you're not comfortable with sacrificing a decent amount of your principles in order to get the candidate that you want, then you probably shouldn't be voting at all. I know a lot of people do that, and a lot of people get called that they're wasting their vote. But at the end of the day, if you don't want to vote, you don't feel like any of these people are really representing your values, which they most certainly do not, then maybe you just shouldn't vote. And that might be the way that I end up going for this next presidential election in a few years. So the next topic that I want to talk about is a little bit less relevant in terms of the national stage and the amount of national popularity that it'll get, but I think that it should. That's not saying that this interview is not going to get a bunch of uh, attention. It's not going to get a bunch of eyes on it. That's not what I'm saying. But what I am saying is that I think that the Elon and Trump fight is going to be all over the mainstream news. I think that people are going to be plastering this all over newspapers, articles, websites, mainstream news, videos, YouTube, all this stuff. People are going to break it down. It's not that important. What I think was actually more important was the recent interview between Joe Rogan and Kash Patel. Kash Patel is the director of the FBI. And if you watched any of this video, I was only about, I think I made it about half to three quarters of the way in, and I had to turn it off because I was kind of sickened. But if you watch this video, and if you don't remember exactly what I put up, I believe about a week ago, I put up a video of Dan Bongino, a former show host and former Secret Service agent, I believe, and Kash Patel together, saying that Epstein actually did kill himself based on evidence that we as the public are not allowed to see. Then Kash Patel went on to an interview with Joe Rogan and repeated himself, essentially said that we have to trust him, that he's seen the evidence, and that Epstein didn't kill himself. Now, I'm not here to speculate either way. However, I will be the one to raise the question, the same question that the mainstream media raised to us the first time that we heard news about Epstein killing himself. And that is that the video cameras broke down. The guards on duty fell asleep. He recently was on suicide watch. And how is he allowed to kill himself? All these different things. An autopsy came out that said that there's no way that these injuries were able to be formed by suicide attempt. That had to be murder. All these different things are now being gone against by the director of the FBI. According to him, there's video. According to him, there are some times when guards can fall asleep. This wasn't necessarily the case. And the biggest issue that I actually brought came out of this, and I think a lot of people have pointed out, was that the main reason that Kash Patel himself doesn't want these videos released to the public is that you're going to re-victimize the women. Again, I will point out to what we've been told for years is that we've been told that so many of these women are already dead. Who are you re-victimizing? You need to and you're telling me you can't blur out a face, you can't blur out a body, you can't blur and show the people who are implicated, show the people of power who are implicated in these accusations. If you're telling me that you can't do that, to me, you're part of the cover up. Again, I'm not trying to speculate on whether Epstein killed himself or didn't. I think that there's a lot of reasons that someone in that position may want to kill themselves, and that's totally understandable. There's also a lot of reasons that that person would be killed. That's also understandable. I think anybody who is not in such a biased position as the FBI director would have to admit. Now, of course, he has to save his job and not put out too much information, yada, yada, yada. But anybody who's just looking from bird's eye view or an outside looking in, it's pretty obvious that this man would have a lot of people that would want to kill himself if the accusations are true. Now, we as the public have never been released enough information to make sure whether these accusations are true. And this is a big detriment to what our current regime in the White House and in the government as a whole, what we're experiencing as Americans is a lack of transparency. And correct me if I'm wrong, one of the biggest reasons that Trump got elected was a level of transparency that would never be seen before. Something like transparency on the Epstein files, transparency on the MLK files, transparency on the JFK files. And none of these have come true. If anything, it's actually been the opposite. Any final releases have come with massive redactions that actually add more questions than answer. And it's gotten to a level now where there's such a lack of trust, at least on my behalf, when you're talking about the government as a whole, that we actually don't have competent people and we don't have an ability to discern what is fact or fiction. And when it comes to someone like Kash Patel, well, I'm of the opinion that this man knows more than he's letting on. You look at, I'm not someone to believe in body language people that study this and can tell when you're lying or not. But at the end of the day, this isn't even body language. This is the way that the questions were answered. The way that the information was posed in terms of Epstein specifically was that I know better than you, I'm holier than thou, and you just don't understand what I understand. Well, if I'm to believe that, guess what? I need to see the evidence. I need to see the video. I need to see the documents that you're seeing, and we're just not getting that. So, at the end of the day, why I think that this issue poses more of a threat to the truth and the overall knowingness of the American public is that this is the American FBI director, just reasonably speaking, not being honest about how he feels about these things. And furthermore, when you're talking about why it means more than a fight between Elon Musk and Donald Trump, is that at the end of the day, I think most people would understand that Donald Trump and Elon Musk are both mega egos. And when we talk about mega egos, they're going to fight. And when a mega ego fights, they are not going to resort to strictly truth. They are going to resort to any means necessary in order to destroy their opponent. You're talking about Kash Patel. You're talking about someone who is a leader, who is the director of the FBI, and someone whose words and his ability to discern information is going to be looked at under a magnifying glass, whether that is true or not true information. That is very implicative of the entire government. And it was very sad to see, I think, of the way that the way that Kash Patel tried to explain away the atrocities that were committed, not only by Jeffrey Epstein, but his client list, the people that did them, and the fact that we're not going to re victimize these women. Well, guess what? These women have already been victimized, and not only that, the American government has been complicit, especially in the sense that Jeffrey Epstein got a very, very light sentencing the first time that he got arrested. Let's put this thing to bed. If you have information that exonerates him to a degree, put it out. If you have information that puts him and other people at risk of going to jail, put it out. Stop fiddling with the American minds, and in my opinion, just stop messing with me. I'm getting more and more to the point where I'm thinking of the next elections that come around of just sitting out. And I don't think that that's the way that the American people should be feeling it. Although there has been a lot of people since I have been of age to vote, a lot of people that have come out and say, oh, well, I'm skipping this vote. And none of these parties really agree with me. I don't agree with them. I'm getting to that point. And I think that it is imperative that both parties and the leaders of these parties and the leaders of these organizations, especially these government organizations, something like the CIA, FBI, NHS, DHS, all these organizations have to come out and prove that they belong, because otherwise that's where the cuts need to be made. These people are taking away from the ability of us to live free lives and actually understand the information that's put forth in front of us rather than being lied to constantly and being fed a narrative that is actually counter American. So, with that being said, I hope that I got my point across again. I apologize to a degree that I did not put out a chronological order of all this feud of Musk and Trump, but I also think that it's not that important. And I think that the bigger points to understand between that feud is that no matter what you vote for, no matter what you think you're getting, you're being lied to a certain degree by these huge politicians. And I think that the thing that we should pay more attention to, given that it was on a long form basis and not just on tweets or clips or whatever, is the Kash Patel interview, because it was very telling to me. It was very telling that there's a lot of information that we're not going to be allowed to see as the public, and maybe we should be pushing for that. We should be fighting more. Without any more, I'm going to keep it light again today. I am your host, Sal Sante. This is the We the Patriots podcast. I hope you enjoyed. Get into my comments. This was actually in response to a couple of requests that I got to cover the Elon Musk and Trump feud. So if you got things that you want me to cover, you got things you want me to research, please hit me in the DMs, hit me in the comments of the show, and I will be sure to try to hit those as best I can, unless you're being an idiot. So, not to say I'm not an idiot sometimes, but you get what I'm saying. Hope you have a great rest of your day.
Fucking say I wanna be something, not nothing. Trapped inside my dream and I'm running away from these demons. But the feeling's so good, I'ma keep dreaming.